What do we shoot? Timmy's here. Now, here is my throwback segment where I talk about the films that turned 10, 20, and 30 this week. Alright, the film celebrating their 10th anniversary. We got the not so great film Pompeii. Now, Pompeii was, of course, a volcano based film that starred Kit Harington, and this was at a time where, like, Kit Harington was like, let's say, trying to get, break out into the film business. Because obviously he had a hit with Game of Thrones. So this was pretty much like his first major starring vehicle outside Game of Thrones here. And you had the likes of Kiefer Sutherland, Emily Brown, and you had some cool cast members. And it was also directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who gave us the Resident Evil movies, Three Musketeers, Monster Hunter, most recent. Not everything he's put out. He's more of a mess than hit, to be honest, yeah. Now, if you guys don't know much about the story here, it is actually based on the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD that destroyed Pompeii, a city of the Roman Empire. And let me just say, this was one of the worst films I saw that year. It was awful. Like, the visuals wasn't all that great. The performances weren't the best. It was boring as heck. It just really didn't do anything for me. I mean, it really just was trying to showcase Kit Harington to become a bona fide. This was pretty much his like major movie stardom, and it didn't work out too well. So yeah. Now, also turning 10, we got Hayao Miyazaki's The Wind Rises. Now, this features a voice talent that includes the likes of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Emily Blunt, Martin Short, Stanley Tucci, Elijah Wood, Jennifer Grey, Darren Criss, and of course this was actually Hayao Miyazaki's last film before he came back with The Boy and the Heron. And this is of course based on a true story of a lifelong love of flight inspires Japanese aviation engineer Jiro Horiguchi, whose storied career includes the creation of the A6 millimeter World War II fighter plane. And while this is not like Hayao Miyazaki's best work in my opinion, it's an okay one. The true story aspect was pretty decent. The animation was cool. Obviously, I mostly saw the US version, which had like the US actors in it, but it's like it's just not as good as, let's say, Spirit Away or even most recent The Boy and the Heron. It's just an okay one in my opinion. Far better than Pompeii, that's for sure. All right, now a lot of stuff turns 20 this week. Now the film celebrating the 20th anniversary, we got the most controversial movie of that year, The Passion of the Christ. Now, this was of course directed by Mel Gibson, starring Jim Caviezel, Monica Bellucci. Now here you had Caviezel playing the role of Jesus of Nazareth. And of course, Monica Bellucci plays Mary Magdalene and depicts the passion of Jesus. The passion of Jesus, largely according to like the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and it like draws on Polish accounts such as like the Friday of Sorrows. Here, and of course, this movie was very controversial at the time. Like, it is really hard to watch because you do see, the crucifixion of Jesus here, and it's a really, really hard watch. And this, of course, became one of the most highest-grossing R-rated films of all time until Deadpool came out, and even Deadpool poked fun at that. Yeah, Passion of the Christ is still a pretty good one. Jim Caviezel was pretty good at Jesus. Monica Bellucci was great. Mel Gibson, of course, very a controversial figure in his own right, and him doing this was obviously very controversial there. But I think he did a really decent job telling the story here, and it is brutal to watch. I mean, yeah, there's stuff like I've probably seen this movie maybe a couple times, and that's really it. It's a really hard watch. Of course, South Park even pretty much parodied the Passion of Christ before as well. So there's that. But yeah, not a bad one. Just a hard watch there. All right. Now films. Now also turning 20. We got American Psycho 2 and American Girl. That's right, people. They decided to do a sequel to American Psycho, and this has something to like. This literally totally ignores everything from the original. Like we do not have Patrick Bateman played by Christian Bale in this at all. This time around, we got Mila Kunis, who of course at the time was very popular thanks to that Seven show. And you even had William Shatner was also in this. And here you got Mila Kunis, who portrays a criminologically a student who seeks to advance her career by murdering her classmates. And it's not that great a film, but it's more of a guilty pleasure of mine. Definitely one of my favorite bad horror films there is. Mila Kunis just goes on a rampage throughout. Seeing William Shatner plays like a professor is very interesting. So it's not a great film, but it's more like those so bad it's good type horror films. So all right, now other films turning 20, we got Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. Now, of course, this is based on the 1999 novel of the same name and stars Lindsay Lohan as an inspiring teen actress whose family moves from New York City to Jersey. And of course, you had like Adam Garcia who plays her favorite rock musician. The late Glenn Headley plays her mother. Allison Pill was also in this. It even introduced Megan Fox in her theatrical film debut. Now, of course, this came out the same year that Liz Lohan would go on to start in another teen hit that year, Mean Girl. So, 2004 was a really cool year for Liz Lohan. And of course, she had that iconic song "Teenage Drama Queen," which I used to play that song tons of times back in the days. Uh, but yeah, well, this is not as good as let's say Lindsay's other stuff like Mean Girls or Freaky Friday. It is a really cute one. Like Lindsay Lohan definitely plays her part really well. Megan Fox, I mean, seeing Meg like a very young Megan Fox in this is very interesting there. So yeah, a really decent teen comedy we're checking out. I mean, early 2000s was a solid year for the teen genre. And Confession Teen Drama Queen was definitely one of them. Another teen comedy that turns 20 that year, this week, is Eurotrip. Now, it is, of course, a teen comedy directed by Jeff Schaefer, starring Scott Melsowitz, who was also in that movie Mean Creek, which also turns 20 this year. You also had Michelle Trachtenberg, and even Matt Damon, who, of course, sings the most iconic song of Scotty Doesn't Know. Who remembers Scotty Doesn't Know? Like, today's generation does not know what Scotty Doesn't Know, right? Now, if you guys don't know much about the story here, Scott portrays Scotty Thomas, an American teenager who travels across Europe in search of his German pen pal, Miak, who's of course played by Jessica Burrows, accompanied by his friend Cooper, played by Jacob Petz, and twin siblings Jenny and Jamie, played by Trachtenberg and Wester. Quest takes him to England, France, and Netherlands, Germany, and a lot of embarrassing situations along the way. He also had like Fred Armisen was also in this, Kristen Krug, and seeing Matt Damon like play rock. I always keep forgetting Matt Damon's in this, but I remember seeing him like playing a rock star here in that most iconic song here. I really quite like Matt Damon in this part. And it definitely is a really fun road trip comedy here. Also, not as funny as let's say American Pie or any other like R-rated comedy of that year. It's still a really fun one we're checking out. Now, other films turning 20, we got Against the Ropes, which is a sports film directed by Charles S. Dutton, starring Meg Ryan, Omar Epps, Dee McDermott, Kerry Washington, Tony Shalhoub. And it's the story of a fictional account of boxing manager Jackie Kellen, the first woman to achieve success in the sport. Kellen has a bit part in the film, playing a reporter and a few lines in the scenes here. So, of course, this is based on a true story. Meg Ryan's pretty good in this. Omar Epps, of course, he was pretty big in the '90s. Like, remember Omar Epps was in that Tupac movie Juice. He was one of the first persons to get the axe in Scream 2. Uh, so, so yeah, I've always liked Omar Epps. I believe he was also in Love and Basketball too, if I'm not mistaken. Omar Epps is always great when he pops up. And his chemistry with Meg Ryan, and this was pretty cool. I mean, who would have, like, Meg Ryan had a really interesting career, from doing stuff with Tom Hanks, you know, when Harry Met Sally, to this. I mean, talk about a really cool career Meg Ryan had back in days. And this is actually, like, this obviously is not her best work or anything like that, but it's a really decent one worth checking out. All right, also turning 20, we got Welcome to Mooseport. This was directed by Donald Petrie, who gave us movies like Mystical Geniality, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and Mystic Pizza. It stars Ray Romano, who, of course, at the time was very popular thanks to Everybody Loves Raymond. You also had Gene Hackman, which I believe was actually his final film before his retirement, if I'm not mistaken. You also had Christine Ambraski, uh, Fred Savage, Marsha Gay Harden, and if you guys know much about the story here, to recover from a vicious divorce, a former U.S. President Monroe Cole, played by Gene Hackman, retired to his own vacation home in sleepy Mooseport, Maine, when the local town council approaches him to run for mayor in an upcoming election. And of course, you have I see he also campaigns against his rival Handy Harrison, played by Ray Romano, the owner of the local hardware store here. And to be honest, I remember watched this one back in the days. I was not impressed by it. I really did not have much like last to it. Uh, Seeing Gene Hackman, of course, still acting around that time was really interesting. Uh, it's a really shame that two of the best actors ended up like pretty much ended their career off with something not so great. Like Sean Connery had League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was his last film, and that was so good. Now Gene Hackman had this. It's a shame that actors can't retire from a high note, but hey, you gotta do it, I guess. But Gene Hackman was still fine in this. Ray Romano was pretty funny here too. So the movie itself wasn't so great, but at least we had Gene Hackman in this. And come on, the guy Gene Hackman is a living legend. So yeah. Now films turning 30 this week. We got the the Shaquille O'Neal classic, Blue Chips. Now the film was directed by Willem Friedkin, and it's really interesting because he is the guy who gave us like the original Exorcist, obviously, the French Connection. Talk about a really cool career, like a very wide range of career he had. And this was also written by Ron Shelton, who I believe also directed Bull Durham, if I'm not mistaken. He is pretty much like the Spielberg when it comes to sports. Now, the movie also stars Nick Nolte as a college coach trying to recruit a winning team. His players were portrayed by actors as well as real life basketball stars, including Shaquille O'Neal as well as Larry Bird, Bobby Hurley, and you even had Louis Gossett was also in this. Now, Shaquille O'Neal, let's be real. At the time, he was really trying to get his hands into the acting gang. Remember Steel? Yeah, we always tried to figure out Steel. Kazam, remember Kazam? He's also popped up in Adam Sandler movies as well, like Grown Ups 2, Blended. But I'm talking about a starring vehicle. And this is actually a pretty fun one, though. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, of course, it really seemed like the 90s was a time to like really try to get NBA players, into the film business. Of course, at the time, like in the 90s, we had Michael Jordan. Now, Shaquille O'Neal, of course, did that. And he was actually pretty fine here. Like, is Shaquille O'Neal like one of the better actors? Obviously not. Mike. If I had to say who was better, Michael Jordan in Space Jam or Shaquille O'Neal in Blue Chips, I obviously would go with Michael Jordan, obviously. But that's just me there. But still, Blue Chips is a really good one. Like Nick Nolte was pretty good. Some of the other players, they're pretty cool in this shoe. So not a bad watch. All right, also turning 30, we got Reality Bites. Now, this was actually the directorial debut by Ben Stiller, and I believe this was actually the movie that really put Ben Stiller on the map for most people. He also had Winona Ryder as well as Ethan Hawke in this. And the plot follows Lyanna, played by Ryder, an aspiring photographer working on a documentary called Reality Bites, and his disenchanted lives of her friends and roommates, and their challenges to empathize some of the career and life choices faced by Generation X. And this is actually a really good one. Like Ben Stiller, whenever you think of him, you always think of his comedy work and stuff like Meet the Fockers, Meet the Parents, stuff like that. He can do pretty good with directing too. Of course, he actually did direct Tropic Thunder. He gave us Zoolander. This was, of course, his first major feature he's directed, and he did a really good job with this. I mean, this movie really showcased on the value of Generation X. I believe there was actually still talks about a TV show that was, of course, announced like I think last year. So, if that's still happening. But Reality Bites is a really good one. So if you guys haven't seen them, give it a go. All right, also turning 30, we got On Deadly Ground. Now this was, of course, now this was actually starring and directed by Steven Seagal. You also had Ollie Ermey was also in this, and it was actually his only directorial effort, and features minor appearances by the likes of Billy Bob Thornton in one of his like early roles. Here you got Steven Seagal, who plays Forrest Taft, an expert firefighter who chooses to fight back against the environmental destruction caused by his ruthless former employee, played by Michael Caine. I've always said this: Steven Seagal, let's be real, is not a good actor at all. Like he's a pretty terrible actor. I would admit that there. But when he does action, Steven Seagal knows how to do. Like, of course, the '90s was really owned by Steven Seagal. I mean, obviously he wasn't as good as, let's say, Arnold or Stallone or anything like that, but he was really like bring his all here, and maybe wasn't so good on SNL, but and it's a shame that Steven Seagal doesn't do anything anymore. But let's be real, it's been a while. Like I think the last Steven Seagal movie I quite enjoyed was maybe Machete, and he was like barely in that. So yeah, but I don't know. I still always like Steven Seagal. I just never thought he was like. I just never thought he was a good actor, but as an action star, he knows how to bring it. Who does not love a good Steven Seagal fight 'em up action film? And I believe his first movie was like Out of Justice, if I'm not mistaken, like in the '80s. So yeah, but yeah, On Deadly Ground was actually a pretty fun one. It's like one of the best action movies of the '90s. Definitely not. It's probably maybe honorable mention there, but it is a really fun one worth checking out. I see Michael Caine play the villain in this was always cool there too. So hey, he was far better than this than he was in Jaws 3D or Jaws of Revenge. Let's be real. But that aside, let me let you guys. Which of these films stand out to you the most? To me, the 10-year one will go to The Wind Rises. The 20-year one, I just say Passion of the Christ because I also have that as a thumbnail. But I'm actually gonna go with Confession of the Teenage Drama Queen. That actually holds up a little bit. Like I still remember watching that at the time. And the 30-year one, I'm gonna go with Reality Bites. Drop comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Tim and Sign.